Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. My name's Abby Steele, and today we are going to take a look at why didn't we... Oh, I keep bouncing in and out of the green room. Sorry about that. Right, anyway, welcome. Hi, I'm Abby Steele. Let's look at why didn't we score better in the phonics screening check. Let me share my slides with you. Screen, allowed to share window, share this window. Hopefully you can now see my slides. There we go, that's them up on the screen. So why didn't we score better in the phonics screening check? And this session is, for some of you, might be about that actually you didn't score very well and you're not too sure why. For some of you, you might not have scored as highly as you would love to, but actually it was quite realistic and you do have an inkling of why that is, but you're just interested to come along and hear what I think about why you might not be scoring very well. So whatever your situation, I'm sure you're going to find this a really interesting session. In this session, we are going to look at 4 reasons that I think people get low phonics screening check scores. We are going to do some data analysis. I'm going to show you a case study, a real case study where a year 1 class wasn't achieving very highly and they wanted to unpick the reasons and look at what they could do about that. And linked to that, we're going to look at some action planning, like what should you do about it, and report creation, this idea that actually it's about sharing with stakeholders what's going on and why, and feeling more confident about that. So we'll look at report creation as well. And then a bit of reflecting on the effectiveness of teaching. So these are 4 reasons. There could be more reasons, but these are the 4 reasons that come to my mind if I hear that a school hasn't done particularly well in phonics screening check. Number 1, small cohort size skewing the percentage. Number 2, English as a new or additional language and not long enough spent learning phonics to be able to access the screening check. Number 3, SEND, children who have additional needs. And number 4, quality of teaching and or quality of assessing, tracking and monitoring. We're kind of bundling those in together. And it might be more than one of those reasons. Sometimes it can be a few of those reasons together. It is likely you already know and do all the right things. When I speak to schools and we talk through and we unpick what's going on, actually what I pull out of them is that they do know the reasons. They're just not maybe feeling very confident about that. They need a bit of reassurance about, yes, your analysis sounds correct to me and your actions sound good to me. But it's not helpful, is it? When we have messages out in the public domain like our school achieves 96% every year and things like 82% as the national average is not really good enough. That's saying it's okay for almost 20% to fail. So if we celebrate that we get like 82%, we're actually saying, don't worry about the other 18%. It's okay for them not to have reached the benchmark. And those things are going to make you feel anxious, especially sometimes when you work in a school, you're in a bit of a bubble. You can be in a bit of isolation. You don't know what results are necessarily going on across the area or across the country. Especially if you are taking on board all the advice, you're doing all the things that everybody's telling you, and you're still only getting, for example, 65 to 75%. It's frustrating. Now, what you need to appreciate is, in many schools, hearing those ambitious messages, along with implementing a validated systematic synthetic phonics program, have transformed children's reading progress. So the reason that in the public domain you hear those things, everybody's being very pushy and striving for more, is because that has seen big changes. There are loads of schools every year that I hear about that say, oh my goodness, we were only achieving 65%, and now we're getting up in the 80s, up in the 90s. Like, this has really done things for our school. So that's why those messages are said. But I think it's really important that you know that not all the schools are the same. In fact, schools can be wildly different from one another, and that needs to be talked about too. So number 1 then, small cohort size. We're not going to spend any time on this one because it's really straightforward. If you have a small cohort, your numbers are going to be skewed. That percentage is going to be affected by just 1 or 2 pupils not reaching the benchmark. So it's important, if that's the issue, that you talk in terms of numbers alongside your percentage. So instead of saying, oh yeah, we got 60%, You might say, well, 60% of our year one cohort reached the benchmark on the phonics screening check. 4 children aren't working at that level just yet. 2 children are new to English and have only been at our school for 3 weeks. And 2 children have complex learning needs and are progressing on a bespoke pathway. So when you talk like that, you're instantly showing that there is a very valid and clear reason for your 60% and that you're completely on top of what those other reasons are and how many children sit in those categories. Number 2, EAL plus not long enough learning phonics. So actually, many EAL children make really rapid progress with phonics and decoding. They pick it up very naturally. Phonics isn't going to be their problem. Their problem is going to be the comprehension because, of course, the language knowledge can really lag behind. That's where they will struggle. But the phonics screening check might not be an issue for them at all. The difficulty is how long they've been learning English for or how long they've been at your school for. So if you have a school that has a really transitional kind of community, you have children that join your school, and I know lots of those children that join the school throughout the year. It's useful to talk in terms of time spent learning phonics at your school. So for example, you might say non-English speaking learners join our school throughout the year. We know that unless our EAL joiners have additional barriers such as SEND, and they might, they reach the benchmark for the phonics screening check on average after spending 6 months with us. You could be more specific. The children who join us in year 1, who are new to English or English as a second language, actually, so long as they join us by this date, we know we can get them through that screening check. But if they join us after this date, then actually there simply isn't enough curriculum time to get them to where they need to be. So try to be specific about how many learners, when they joined, how long it took. And you might even say something, I know some schools say, in our school, we achieve 60% in the phonics screening check. This is due to having a high amount of learners that join our school through the year with English as a new language. But we know that learners who join us in year 1, when they take the phonics screening check in year 2, we get 100%. They all pass then, unless there are additional complex needs. So be confident about that. And yeah, just use sort of numbers to explain. Now, 3 and 4 I've put together in this example here, and we're going to look at 4 teaching again towards the end. But point 3, SEND, and point 4, teaching, sometimes you need to unpick that a little bit because it might look like more one than the other, but actually we need to delve a bit deeper. So when teachers aren't quite sure what the reason is for low PSC results, it's often a combination of these things. We need to be really careful not to say, it's the children, they are just so low level. We have so many undiagnosed SEND issues. That might be the case, but we just need to be really careful not to make sweeping statements about it. And we also need to be really careful not to say, it's the teaching. Teachers are rogue and do their own thing in our school. There's no consistency with the teaching. The vast majority of teachers that all teachers I meet are really hard-working teachers who want to do the best that they can. And actually getting to grips with the nuances, the finer points in phonics, it can be really hard, especially if, for example, you're new to the year group. You might not be used to teaching reception or year 1, and then it's a really steep learning curve. So you can be an excellent teacher, but you can struggle with your phonics teaching. You could be an excellent phonics teacher, but you might struggle with, for example, classroom management, or you're not used to that age group. So both of these things need further unpicking to really look at what it is. So we need to get forensic to unpick the exact issues. We need to then present that information really simply for others to understand. So sometimes I will say to schools, how much have you analysed your data? Have you unpicked, what's going on? Where is the struggles happening? Are they in reception? Is it in year 1? And they'll present me with some data, some charts or, bits of information. And it's quite complex to unpick it. And this is what I do for a job. So I find it easier than some, but it's still really hard to unpick. What is that column? What is that date? What is that referring to? And what we want to do when we've got low phonics screening check results is present this information for shareholders. So the head teacher who has to then answer to the governors, and they might have to also answer to a school improvement advisor or to Ofsted or to parents. You want to present the information in a way that's really easy to understand and easy to talk about. And doing that helps you feel really confident about that you know what's going on. And then from that, you can plan. And here's what we're going to do about it. For example, we're going to continue with the phonics into year 2, or we're going to adjust the way that things are. Or in our school, in our area, we persistently get these low scores, but we know the exact reasons why. And actually, we might need to adjust the way that we manage our phonics teaching and what we do with that. So we're going to get forensic, and we're going to present the information for others to understand. So I'm going to talk you through now my consultancy process. So this is the process that I would use if I go into a school and we're looking at the information. You can use this process as a class teacher. I would if I was in the classroom, as the phonics leader, as the head teacher, or as a literacy consultant yourself. So we're going to look at some data and think about, what is this data telling us? How can we present that information clearly to stakeholders, and how will we use that data to inform and improve our teaching? So what data do you have? In the following case study, we are looking at some data from a year 1 class. This is a real case study. And in this situation, we were being proactive to support the teacher, the children and the teacher in the run up to the phonics screening check. So this actually happened it was very, very early in the spring term, sort of January time. The school had asked me to come in and give a bit of support, and we were looking at that the teachers, the school, the phonics, they knew that this class was struggling, and they wanted to unpick what was going on. To give you some context, the class teacher, the year 1 class teacher, was new to year 1. She hadn't taught year 1. She'd taught for a few years. She was regarded a very good teacher, and I regard her a very good teacher, but she was brand new to year 1. So she hadn't sort of found her feet with everything yet. She was getting there because it was January. So she'd had all of the autumn term, but she was new to year 1. She was new to Key Stage 1. So she was new to phonics as well. And this cohort was notoriously challenging. The school knew from the reception year that the cohort was a difficult cohort, and you'll see why in a minute. So they just wanted a bit of extra help in looking at, are we doing everything that we could be doing to help this class? Our phonics screening check, we know it's going to come back quite low. Is there anything we can do before then? And this is kind of a big tip. You should know before. So it shouldn't be a shock to you, the results you get after the phonics screening check. You should be able to almost predict that right back from reception, actually. So reception, children should be blending by about Christmas. So if they're not blending by January, you've got that spring term to really work on it. If children are not blending words by summer term reception, then you really need to be investigating what's going on. Why are they not blending by then? So the work should be being done then, really, rather than in year 1. But for, could be any reason, could be other things going on, could be that the class is, at that point, perhaps emotional needs or behavioural needs are more the focus, and phonics cannot be the focus at that point. There are all sorts of reasons. So anyway, we met with the class teacher. So the phonics leader and I said, great, we'll have a meeting. And it was really good because the head was super supportive in giving us this time. So you need some time together to talk about things. And we met, and I asked the class teacher, could you please bring to the meeting some mock phonics screening check data? If you haven't done it already, and I'd hope that they would be doing it already, but if you haven't already, please do a mock phonics screening check and bring that data to the meeting. And I didn't give her too much of a steer on that because I wanted to look at the way that she presents the data and could that be improved at all. So this is the data that the teacher brought along. And while I sort of talk through it a little bit, I want you to be thinking about, by all means, pop something in the chat if you'd like to. And actually, I need to make sure I've got my chat on the screen, so bear with. Where's my chat? There it is. Right, I've got my chat on the screen. So if anybody wants to put anything in the chat while we're looking at this slide, then please do. What does this data tell you? What else do you want to know? Because this data is really useful and informative, but it's not enough. I need more information. And what we're going to do next, what we're going to say to the teacher, what we're going to ask for, what we're going to suggest happen next. So we can see here we've got a list. The names have obviously all been blocked out. We've got 30 children in this class. So already I'm thinking, oh, that's a big class of year one. You've got 30 children in there. They've been put in order of the results. So you can see there that the children's names are not in alphabetical order, they're not in register order. They've been moved around so that it's easier for us to look at the screen and check results. And you can see at the top there, we've got the children that were scoring the highest. Down to the bottom, we've got the children that were scoring the lowest. We've got 2 children, 16 and 20, with no data. So I'm thinking, well, why is there no data? What's going on with those? And why is there no data? And why is the teacher not done a mock screening check with them? Perhaps if they were absent, were they back the next day? Could she have done something then to bring along to the meeting? Because with no data, I've got nothing to go on with those children. Or are they off, completely absent from school, or somebody's left, or somebody's joined, or, what's going on with those children? Really interesting to see that actually there's quite a lot of children there, and this is early spring one, so maybe January. She has a lot of children scoring very highly in the phonics screening check. So actually, I'm not thinking, oh, maybe the teaching's a bit weak because there's all these children and they're all about the middle. She's got loads of children doing really well. That suggests to me, yes, she might have some natural able readers, but actually my indication there is, oh, there's some good teaching going on there. There's some, good stuff. But also she's got the polar opposite, hasn't she? She's got, gosh, almost half that class with really very low phonics screening check results. And that makes me think, wow, really what springs to my mind is I think she's got some complex SEND in this class, and quite a lot of children with that profile. So we get a good steer of the spread of the class, the size of the class. We've got a good idea of, who's doing okay and who's not doing okay. I would like to know about those no data children. I would also like to know about another bit of data to compare. So I would like another measure to compare against. Here we've got spring one. Can she do me another mock phonics screening check in a few weeks so we can directly compare, are the children making progress? And that's the biggie, actually. It's not really about what children score, it's are they making progress, and how fast is that progress? Or are they just bobbing along at the same, is child 30 zero through reception, 0 through year one? Are they going to be 0 through year two? What's going on with them? Likewise, the children, so for example, child 5 got 27, which is fantastic. But maybe that child's been getting 27 since they were at the beginning of reception. Maybe they are just a really good reader. They could come to reception reading. I would like to see them making progress. That child needs to be getting 40. So 27 is great, but where have they come from? Anyway, so it'd be interesting to see what you think, if you have any different ideas about what it tells you, what else you'd like to know, whether that's a similar way that you present your information. Because like I say, I see all these complicated charts with information that's hard to unpick. So hopefully a summary of what I just said. What does the data tell you? There are 30 children in the class, lots are scoring well, lots are scoring poorly. What else do you want to know? I would like to know an exact date. So going from memory, this was about January, it was very early on. But if this had just come to me at spring one and it was later on, I'd be saying, well, when in spring one? Spring one is 6 weeks. It's a 6-week half term, or even 7 weeks. Is this the beginning, the middle, the end? Lots can change in that time. I'd really like to know the date, actually. Comparison measure, really important. I would like another set of data to be able to compare against. Why no data for 2 children? Why are we only discussing this now? Why are we not discussing this towards the beginning of the year or even at the end of the reception year? Why are we not unpicking things then? Maybe they did. Maybe this was just they did their own thing then and we're having a look at it now. And then what do we do next? I'd like to discuss each child in detail, and that is really important. I don't want to talk in terms of groups, the SEND group, the EAL group, the group that are doing really well. I'm not interested in groups. I am interested in child 1. Who is child 1? If we're in the school together, what is their name? What is their home background like? Do they speak any other languages? What is their attendance like? What's their personality like? Do they enjoy phonics? Do they enjoy reading? Tell me about that individual child. Now, obviously, if you've got a massive school, 2, 3, 4 formentary, it's harder, but I would still do it. As the phonics leader, I would want to meet with each of my teachers and I would want to talk about each individual child by name to really get to know them and unpick what's going on. Then we're going to discuss the provision in detail. So what is it that, how do you teach these children? How do you support those children that are struggling? How do you stretch the children that are doing well? What about the children in the middle? What we're doing to progress them as best we can? And ask for another mock screening check in 3 weeks, about 3 weeks. It's not an exact science, but I'd like another measure. So about 3 weeks feels like a sensible time to ask for. So we're going to use the data to action plan as well. The teacher was guided to implement various support strategies with the learners, and you'll see these in a couple of slides' time. They then took another mock screening check a few weeks later to be able to compare the data over a period. And by comparing 2 data points, it was possible to look at progress rather than solely achievement. And then all this information was displayed in a chart, I think a very simple chart, along with 2 other crucial pieces of information. The additional learner-specific information, such as identified needs or their circumstances, anything relevant to them, and then the planned provision for the groups of learners. So let's have a look at what that looked like. So here we go. You can see in the first column we have the children with the names blocked out, not by alphabetical register order. The children are ordered into roughly their phonics screening check mock results. In the next column, you've got the data that we already saw. That was the data we had the first time. That was the Spring 1 phonics screening check mock score. And we put a little bit of colour coding there. So we put a bit of green colour on the children that are already at that benchmark. We're looking at that. Yep, they're already there. They are, we're really comfortable with the level they're working at. Still like progress. We'd still like to see 40s, but they're doing really well. Then in the next column, we've got this second data measure to be able to compare against. And this was in Spring 2. I would like to know the exact date, but Spring 2 is fine for now. And here you can see, really good progress. And we've actually put a progress column in and shown how much progress, how many additional words were these children achieving. This is suggesting to me strong teaching. So this teacher has a lot of children that are not where she wants them to be, but she is making fantastic progress with them. So the children are making progress. That's fantastic. And the teacher is helping the children. She's achieving that progress. So again, another positive on what we know is going to be a low overall phonics screening check result. So really, heartwarming, really pleasing, a real nice boost of confidence to that teacher to see, wow, look, you're doing it. You've got so many more children towards where you want them to be. They're on track. Some fantastic progress. I mean, look at child 4 from 21 to 37. Something's obviously clicked in for them. Another one, child 13 was only scoring 8, so they were weak. They were a weak decoder. They should have been stronger than that by then, and now they're getting 29. So if that child 13 doesn't pass the screener, and we think they will, because look at that progress, look how well they're doing now, but if they didn't, then we could still talk about, but wow, look at the journey they've been on. Amazing progress. Things have fallen into place with them. They will get it in year 2. So we weren't there quite yet, but we will get that for year 2. And it's been a challenging cohort. We've got, for example, child 16 and child 20 now. Now we've got some data. So we don't have a progress measure because we didn't have the first measure of data. So I'd have rather we could have got some earlier data to compare. But we've got 23, and we've got 18. So, okay, yeah, they're, okay, we can work with that. That's fine. And then as we come down towards the bottom, you can see that we've grayed off child 22 and below. So child 22 and below, we've sectioned off as this is the group of children that we are most concerned about. We don't think that they're going to pass the phonics screening check. And actually, our concern for them no longer is about the phonics screening check. It's about them making progress and continuing on their journey on perhaps an alternative pathway. You might find it really interesting to look at. Child 21 and child 22 have the same scores when they did mock phonics screening check. They both got 6, then they both got 10, which was progress of +4. But when we talked about it with the class teacher, a really valid and important part of our discussions was this: tell me about the child, talk about them, talk about their personality and their behaviours. And we said, do you think child 21 has the potential to keep up with the rest of the class? I know they're struggling, but could they keep up? Could they keep on that mainstream pathway with a bit of additional intervention? What do you think their potential is? And child 22, the same. Do you think child 22 could keep up with the rest of the class if we really push, if we teach to that high level? And will they make more and more progress? They are making progress. Will they make more and more? Can we get them there? Not for the phonics screening check. I just mean in terms of their plan moving forwards. And the teacher said, with her knowledge of the children, she felt that child 21 could cope with whole class teaching, extra intervention, really trying to keep up, had the potential to make much more progress. And child 22, although they got the same results, she felt that there was much higher level of need there, and that child was going to get increasingly lost if she didn't look at some alternative provision for them. So teacher judgment is hugely important. It's not just all on scores. The next column, additional information. So we've just put in very, very brief notes here, but we actually discussed in detail every single child. Tell me about the child. What kind of books do they like reading? How do they feel about phonics lessons? Do they get excited? Are they ready and ready to go? How independently do they work? Are they independent? Are they a year one fuss pot? Because sometimes year ones can be a bit fuss potty, can't they? Or not settle very well. Do they have any additional needs? Now, those additional needs could be diagnosed. They could be undiagnosed, but everybody knows about them. Or it could be, do you have an instinct? Do you feel like there might be something underlying there? Child 6. So child 6 is doing really well. Child 6 is making great progress. They're on track for absolutely, they're already, reaching the benchmark for the phonics screener. But we still made a note, the parent has some concerns. So the parent feels there might be something underlying there with that child with some additional needs. It's just a little concern at the moment. It's nothing, flagging up. EBD, emotional and behavioural difficulties. ESL, English as a second language, obviously not causing a barrier whatsoever for child number 1. Children that were having counselling for various reasons, speech and language. Attendance is a huge issue, and attendance results can be directly linked to academic achievement and academic progress. So attendance is worth noting. We noted there attendance brackets medical. So they weren't at school very much, but there was a really valid medical reason for it. There might be attendance where there's no valid reason, and we're investigating that. And certainly an Ofsted question can be along the lines of, tell me about your attendance and what are you doing about it? How are you helping those children to stay on track when they have such poor attendance? Complex home needs, some premature children in there, medical, and we were a little bit specific, medical with eyes, medical partial deafness, SEND undiagnosed, complex home and attendance. Some children had multiple things going on, and we made a very brief professional note about those things, which I think speaks volumes. It speaks volumes that you can't always judge. You can't always just say, oh yeah, SEN needs, and put those in a category, because there are needs way higher up on that chart. But I think it's very clear to see this is a complex cohort, because this class has a lot of additional needs. And this is more common than you realise across the country in mainstream schools. Sometimes those children aren't necessarily in the best setting. It would be better for them in a specialist setting, but that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, the system's not going to work like that. Sometimes there are children with complex needs, and your mainstream setting is the best place they could be. Absolutely, you are able to cater for that. We have lots of mainstream schools now that have resource hubs or resource centres, or do run as a mainstream school, but they've developed now almost a specialist department where these children that have additional needs or complex additional needs have the opportunity to receive specialist teaching through that sort of route. So this is normal, this complexity. So we talked about the needs, we talked very much in detail, we noted things down. It wasn't relevant for the chart to put in things like personalities and book preferences, and we don't need that for our shareholders. We just need those bullet points of the information. And then in the final column, what is the provision? So what is going on for these children? So you can see there at the top, we've got our regular mainstream provision, daily phonics lessons, and of course, parental communication and resources sent home. And for all of those children, that is fine and adequate. They're making great progress. They're absolutely on track through that route. Then we've got child 15 down to 21. We identified, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 children that we felt would really benefit from some additional intervention in the afternoons in a group 4 times a week by an experienced and trained teaching assistant. Now, I know that not all schools have the luxury of doing something like an intervention. If I had this class and I did not have that luxury, I would look at, could I do something in the afternoon for these children where perhaps the children that didn't need it could be doing something else, something more independent, and I just quickly pull this group for 5-10 minutes just for an extra little bit of booster in the afternoon? Or could I actually do a second phonics lesson in the afternoon after lunch, just quickly, just 10 minutes of the key skills, just of doing some word cards or some flashcards or some blending practice. And all children are going to benefit from that anyway. And it's so quick and brief that the children who don't need it per se, they don't mind it. It's still good practice for them. And I can put in some more challenging words for them. But can I put in a bit more on my own if I don't have the luxury of somebody to come and take intervention? Now, sometimes you'll hear in phonics advice about that if you are going to have an intervention, it really needs to be a teacher, for example. And more often than not, the teaching assistants that I meet that are leading interventions are highly experienced, highly qualified. They are very, very capable. So you might need to put some extra support in there to guide them as to what you'd like them to do, or have the communication with them about what they're doing or what they're going to focus on, plugging gaps or blending practice. But often a teaching assistant is the perfect person, I think, to lead that intervention, and it's really great for their development and confidence as well. So that's what we did in this case. These 7 children, 4 days a week, were pulled in the afternoon for a very short, focused, teaching assistant-led intervention, focusing on what it was they needed to practice. So they would use flashcards and they would use pupil practice booklets to hone in on the exact skills they need to practice, and some mini whiteboard work. Keep it really simple. Now, the bottom clump of children, so child 22 down to child 30. So what is that? Is that 9 children, is that? These children had very complex needs. They were making progress, but it was extremely slow progress. They had a lot of medical needs as well, actually. So these children were drowning in the main classroom teaching. And it was decided that because the school was able to staff this, and because it would benefit those children, and also it would benefit the children in the main lesson because the teacher could really get on with the sort of mainstream phonics teaching, that for the daily phonics teaching, those children worked as a group away from the classroom. They had a separate teaching area. They had a highly qualified, she actually was, I think, a qualified teacher. But they were able to have this additional adult that took that group, that really was able to hone in on their needs. They had some adapted resources. So again, I know another tricky area, and we'll talk more about this in the future. I'm going to do some more sort of webinars on supporting children with additional needs. Obviously, you've got to balance fidelity to your program. You don't want to mix methods, but sometimes when you have children with really complex needs, you have to find the route in with them, and it's not simple. You have to really look at what's going to work for them. And I met this young chap, and he had quite severe autism. And this chap They tried everything. He was on a much slower pathway. And the thing that worked for him was having flashcards with a grapheme on that were plain. They had no mnemonic, they had no picture on. And he was able to design his own picture. So he would draw like a little superhero that would go with that letter sound. Now, in 99% of cases, that's a faff, too time consuming, not going to focus in enough on what he needs to learn. But in this particular case, that was the answer for him and it worked for him. And he then remembered his letter sounds based on his mnemonic system that he designed. It was a really, bespoke case. So you can have fidelity to your program, you can have fidelity to your resources, the way you do things, the lesson structure, but you can have a little bit of flexibility in specific cases just to deviate enough to make it work for these children. That group was also having home support at an individual level. So the things that were being sent home, the communication with parents was almost one-to-one. It was really looking at exactly what the next steps were for each child and working with parents to support that as best they could. Some children had external support from external specialists, for example, the sight team. And actually for this group, they worked really well in an extremely quiet area with reduced stimulation. So they actually had the lighting slightly dim, still bright enough to work, because obviously you need nice clear light for seeing things, but they had it slightly dimmed because of the visual needs. And they had visual and noise distractions reduced. So they didn't have lots of stuff going on around them or on the walls or in the room. And that was really important for this particular group's needs. So I know that's really hard for every school to achieve if you don't have extra staff, if you don't have breakout areas. And obviously my first route always is whole class teaching, everybody in together, socially inclusive, academically inclusive, teach to the top, you will raise those children up. That really does work. This is extreme cases. These are children with complex special needs. And I think that's the level that we're at in our schools generally, is ironing out, working out. There are more children in this list, child 13, 14, 15, 16. There are those middle children. You could argue some of those have got lots of additional needs, but the judgment is, nope, they can be raised up, they can have a bit of keep up. It's this particular group that needs this additional provision. And like I say, we'll talk about that more another time. I'll give you more sort of support and ideas about what people are doing with that. But this level of analysis is really useful. And hopefully you agree that that chart is very clear and very easy to understand. So moving on swiftly. Using this data to action plan. So one of the school's concerns was, oh my goodness, we're going to get this really low phonics screen and check result. We're going to get in the 60s. We're going to get like 60%, and our governors are going to go crazy. Our parents are going to go crazy. Like, everyone's going to think we're a terrible school. How can we reassure them that we're doing all the very best things? And this is really excellent provision, excellent teaching going on. So we made a little report, nothing fancy. A report that could be shared with stakeholders, head teachers and governors. And this report and making this report really helped that year one teacher to focus on the agreed actions, because there's so much going on. The school year goes so quickly. It helped her stay really focused on what we were doing. So this is the report that we created. Overview. This report aims to document the reasons that some year one children at this school are currently not on track to pass the phonics screening check, and what we are doing to close the gap. I've often like that phrase, close the gap. We will look at information on progress made using phonics screening check mock scores, additional relevant information, the provision that is in place, and the plan for this half term until early June. So we were having like a real intensive run up to the screener, and then there'd be another plan for after that to carry on the good work. We put these bullet points in the report. Children are making progress. See progress column above. 33% of the year one cohort have already reached the benchmark for the phonics screening check, which is usually 32 out of 40. With intensive focus, we feel 63% of the class can reach the benchmark. It would be 70% if two more children could make accelerated progress. So we were kind of like, oh, could we possibly? We'll see what happens. It is recommended that the SEND identified group, and this is very unusual that we do this is an extreme case, 30% should not be entered for the phonics screening check. This is following in-depth discussion and analysis of the needs and capacity of each child. However, the class teacher will create an appropriate alternative version of the phonics screening check that these children can access and show success. So we went back to the phonics screening check guidance and we looked at, is there really any point in some of these children sitting this phonics screening check because they're scoring 0, they're scoring 1. How demoralizing for them to have to sit through and read some words that they absolutely can't read. Categorically, they can't read. And we can show so clearly their additional need here and the great things we're doing for them. And the guidance had said that, yes, it's the head teacher's call, but the head teacher can approve that you don't sit some children for the screening check. But it suggested that good practice would be to do something like create an alternative, a very simplified version. So you might have something that looks like the phonics screening check, and it's just got some letter sounds on it. So just some grapheme. So do they know the sound? Because you know that they do know some sounds. They can have success with, how many sounds do they know? Amazing. They can't blend all these words, but they know 25 sounds. That's fantastic. That's good progress. And so she used the first part of the screening check with sort of CVC words as well, where she knew they might get a few of those and put those in. And I can tell you that after they did this, the parents really appreciated that. The children really enjoyed it. They were doing the same as everybody else with their phonics screening check. And they were able to have success. Look how many I've scored on my phonics screening check. It's fantastic. Anyway, the progress of the SEND identified group is demonstrated in the school's system. That's important. We were flagging that group of children who needed really something a bit different, but the information that we were talking about and planning and analysing matched the other information the school had. So the SENCO's information tied in beautifully. Whatever tracking assessment systems has got tied in beautifully. So we weren't doing something different to what's already being done in the school. It tied in. After discussion today, the afternoon intervention group was updated to reflect the latest need. So that intervention group in the afternoons was changeable. If children no longer needed that, they didn't go to that. If there was another child who was really struggling and could benefit, they were put into that. So that group stayed flexible. And the class teacher has analysed phonics screening check mock score papers and identified gaps to target. They've really looked at, okay, we're coming up to the screener, what gaps are there, how could we help with these gaps, and check we're plugging those. The plan for the term, starting immediately and leading up to the phonics screening check. The class teacher was asked to provide a calendar to the phonics leader with a condensed teaching plan to ensure all necessary content was taught by the phonics screening check. Now, this meant in terms of Rocket Phonics completing booklet 4. Because this cohort was a very challenging cohort and they had been since the beginning of reception and some of them since nursery, the school had already adapted their phonics teaching so that the whole class was working slightly behind the programme of where they would have been if it was another cohort. So in year 1, you would typically do booklet 4, booklet 5, booklet 6. But in year 1, they had gone back and revisited booklet 3. So they did the reception summer term. They bumped it to year 1 and did it then, revisited all of that to really make sure that they weren't racing ahead and leaving loads of children behind. And that had worked really, really well for all the children that were making great progress. But they just needed to make sure they weren't holding back any children that maybe could have scored, 36, 38, if they'd have been taught all the content. Was there any phonics missing that they needed for the phonics screening check? And in Rocket Phonics, it's very minimal. The majority of the phonics screening check is covered in all the reception content, and then booklet 4. Booklet 4 is important for the rest. And there's only ever maybe sometimes soft C that crops up sometimes that you need to teach. So they looked at that. That was really good. And a calendar because, again, the time whizzes away from you when you're teaching. In the afternoon intervention group, they focused on GPC, grapheme phoneme correspondence recognition, and phonics screening check word blending only. They kept it pacey. They made it fun and competitive. They thought about the quantity of words read. So we've got 5 minutes. How many words can we read? If it works for your children, racing the timer. I'm going to put a 5-minute egg timer on, guys. How many words are we going to blend before the timer runs out? And you can do things like reading to your partner or scoring points for words read. So you can make it fun, but you're keeping the activity absolutely simple. We are reading words. We're practicing blending. We're cracking blending. Phonics screening check word blending cards to be used multiple times daily, lining up before we go to lunch, before the register, after the register, on the way out to the playground. It's slipping in those little and often opportunities. Sending home practice and guidance for the phonics screening check. The Friday timetable. Now, usually in Rocket Phonics on a Friday, we look at common exception words, or a bit of consolidation or a bit of something fun. But actually, Friday, get that as a phonics lesson. 5 days a week, phonics lesson, or build in the blending to that a common exception word lesson and your blending cards, and your grapheme cards if you need to. Phonics twice a day. Could we build in an afternoon session for phonics twice a day? Heavy focus on automatic recognition, really getting them confident and fluent in recognizing graphemes and word blending. So again, using flashcards or word lists. I can blend word lists are really good for this. Having flashcards available for children on their desks for an extension task for paired or independent practice daily. Saturate the classroom and all talk around the importance of and practice at blending words on the wall to practice, pointy hands so that children can go and point at the words and practice like that. One-to-one daily reading. So if you're hearing readers one-to-one, include some flashcards. So include some words, put an I can read, I can blend word list in that book and do some blending, even if they can already read. Consider a reward or an incentive scheme. So hopefully the satisfaction and the success children get from blending is the reward, but you might just need a little extra boost, some stickers or some stars or points for their effort, for efforts in trying. And the class teacher to meet with the phonics lead fortnightly, really frequently, to assess the specific progress of orange children. So orange children are our middly group, hyper focusing on accelerated progress and impact of the phonics screening check focused actions this term. So in some ways that list is like, oh my goodness, like, God, going a bit over the top, aren't we? But actually what you need to take from that is it's an ethos of rigor and urgency, this rigorous practice, and it's really urgent at this point in time to crack this blending if children aren't blending. The outcomes. The teacher understood the importance of rigor and focus. She kind of went, oh, I get it now. I haven't got the time to not just really get on with this. The teacher and the phonics leader felt confident about the children's needs and the plan to meet these. The teacher and the phonics leader felt confident to share the information with head teachers, governors, and parents. The build-up to the screener and the actual screener felt positive for all involved. There were no nasty surprises. We've done everything we can to reach this benchmark. Fantastic. Everyone's feeling we did our best. The class did achieve 63%. They didn't get that 70, those extra 2, but that's fine, absolutely fine. They got 63%, and that's fantastic. 63% in this story is marvellous. Well done to everybody, brilliant. All children participated at their own level. They all achieved their own success. They all continued to make progress at their own level. Are we guilty of drilling for the test? So this is something that's sat with me over the years, and I've thought, but aren't we just drilling? Aren't we drilling for the test? Because we know that we can get a load of children to get 32 and then it drops off. And actually, if children are getting 32, they should be getting, I would say 40, but there's always a couple of stinky words in the screener that you need vocabulary for. So 38. Children should not be getting 32, they should be getting 38, categorically. If you can get 20, you can get 38. So this dropping off suggests that we pump them and we drill them to just pass the screener, but they're not really confident. They're not mature decoders. They're not really able decoders. They just scrape through the screener. And I used to feel really uncomfortable about that. And now I think, no, guys, sorry. No, we're not drilling. We're not teaching to test. We're giving valuable extra practice. Blending is really hard. And we need, maybe not quite that level of intensity, but we need rigor and frequent practice all the way through reception, all the way through year 1 to become confident decoders. It's not easy for a lot of children. We shouldn't call the phonics screening check a test. It's simply a check. It's a check-in with how we're doing as teachers. It's a way of checking that across the country, we're all giving our learners the abundance of practice opportunities they need to become confident decoders. The activity of asking our children to read a series of words is no different from the task of reading words within phonics lessons. For beginner readers to get better at blending, they need many, many opportunities to practice, apply, and consolidate their word reading skills. And if the phonics screening check did not exist, we would still need to provide that quantity of practice to see beginner readers become decoders. We need to get on with it. Now, we could argue that actually if the phonics screening check didn't exist, we wouldn't probably push as hard. We would take a more gentle trajectory on our journey to becoming readers. But actually, with my knowledge of how well children need to read at the end of Key Stage 1, how well they need to read at the end of Key Stage 2, how well people need to read going into Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, actually, to hit those marks, we have to be getting them strong while they're little and avoiding them falling into bad habits. So again, I swing back round to, I don't think there's anything wrong with this sort of focus on blending practice. I don't think we are guilty of drilling for the test. We're just having a boost period in year 1. Okay, so that's my little rant about that. I hope you found that really interesting, looking at the data and the chart and unpicking what's going on to get more confident about, explaining it. Just to finish off then, I'm going to whiz you through very quickly a little bit about the quality of teaching. If we are not confident in the quality of the teaching, this can be particularly the case if you have a very large school. If you're the phonics leader and you are responsible for the quality of phonics teaching across a lot of classrooms, that's ever such a big responsibility. And you may have come into this as a class teacher and then you've made the phonics leader because you're interested in phonics, but now you are suddenly a line manager for people development. That's a big old task. It's not easy. And when we think about quality of teaching, there's lots of things that come into it. The confidence of a teacher, the teacher's subject knowledge, the learner's engagement, the learner's progress, fidelity to the programme, the teacher's personality and style, the teacher's relationship with the children, consistency, timing and pace, the teacher's organisation, the teacher's ability to catch any misconceptions, the teacher's ability to recognise learners' needs. Do they have high expectations? There are so many elements to this quality of teaching. What are we seeing? It's really tricky. There's a lot of overlap there between objective measures, such as are you following a lesson structure, and subjective measures, such as their personality and teaching style. You might think somebody's got a terrible personality, a terrible teaching style, but they might still be an excellent teacher. Conversely, they might have the most wonderful personality and teaching style, and you wish you could be like them, but they might not be a great teacher. Does every teacher have to have the X factor, or is it okay, good enough? And I quite like okay is good enough, guys. Okay is good enough. There's so much pressure on us to be so amazing all the time. A lesson could be thoroughly engaging, but is it effective? It could be effective, but did it manage to be engaging? So many things to think about. So one of the things that chased me out of the classroom, actually, and into consultancy is formal lesson observations used to crucify me. I was so torn between wanting to show what I was doing and being proud of myself as a teacher and being absolutely sort of in bits and nervous wreck when I was going to be observed. Formal observations are very stressful for many teachers, and there has been a move away from that to learning walks, but sometimes learning walks are just observations in disguise. Learning walks can sometimes miss the details, because if you're just sweeping through and you're not really actually looking, then you're missing actually all the details that matter. And a popular alternative is coaching. So if in your school you haven't looked at coaching yet, but you want to look at how you can check on the quality of teaching and improve the quality of teaching, coaching is something that a lot of schools do. You have to be careful. Coaching can be mismanaged. You have to handle things sensitively, but it can be really effective, and it's worth learning about and trying. It can be a really positive experience. Could it work for your school? Coaching focuses on specific development areas with the agenda focused on achieving specific immediate goals. So you hone in on one little thing to look at. We're going to look at flashcards. We're going to look at the way that everybody does their flashcards, or we're going to look at blending words. We're going to look at the way everybody models blending words. Coaching has a set duration, and meetings are held in a more structured nature and on a regular basis. So you would have to plan for when is it going to happen? When are we going to get to talk about it? It isn't just for new teachers. Everyone can benefit. Coaching recognises that all teachers are learners and we can learn from each other. Coaching increases rich dialogue about teaching across the school. And there's a researcher called Sam Sims who says instructional coaching is probably the best evidenced form of CPD currently known to mankind. So it can be very powerful. There's a couple of different types of coaching. Coaching's a whole, you could do a whole degree on coaching, you could do a whole qualification. But in terms of us in the classroom, the bit that we need to dip into, there's a couple of different types of coaching. Instructional coaching is like sports coaching, where an expert teacher, so you might have someone come in like me, or you might have your phonics leader who is working at a high level of development, helps the classroom teacher to focus on one aspect of their technique that can be isolated and practiced. For example, your big book talk or your flashcard routine. Instructional coaches collaborate with teachers to get a clear picture of where their teaching is currently, identify a goal, choose teaching strategies to meet the goals, monitor progress, and problem solve until the goals are met. So it's very, helpful, a bit of expert guidance to help you get better at bits of your lesson. Peer coaching, also really great, also really helpful, is when teachers of similar or equal status support each other through mutual problem solving, observations, collaborative teaching, and planning. Especially good if you have multiple form entry schools, you can swap over. But even if you have single form entry school, you can still do it sort of across different year groups. The aim being to improve upon skills through reflection and collaboration without any evaluation. In addition to helping teachers transfer new skills into their own classrooms, peer coaching also facilitates the development of a culture of learning, experimentation, and collegiality. So there's a really nice kind of ethos that goes along this kind of going into each other's classrooms, supporting one another, showing each other what you do. How does peer coaching work? There's an etiquette. So it's really important to have this etiquette, actually, because coaching is something that you should feel positive and you're looking forward to, not that something that's being done to you. The etiquette is a teacher invites the coach to observe them in the classroom. During a pre-observation meeting led by the inviting teacher, they decide on the focus of the classroom observation, the way they'll collect any data, the guidelines for the coach's behaviour in the classroom during the observation, and the parameters of the discussion of observed teaching and the date and time of the observation. So for me, I really enjoy peer teaching. So if I was going to do peer coaching, I would say, right, I'd love you to come in on Monday to my phonics lesson. I really would appreciate if you would look at my carpet routine, so the bit that I do with my flashcards and my talk on the carpet. And actually, I feel really comfortable for you to join in. So if you feel like you would like to contribute to that or you'd like to say something, I'm really happy with that. Whereas somebody else might prefer, I would prefer you to sit at the back of the classroom. I prefer you not to talk to me, just make notes. Please don't interrupt my lesson because it will throw me off. But it's nice that the teacher who is inviting the coach in sets those parameters and can, discuss that. After the observation, a meeting provides opportunities for the teacher and coach to discuss, analyse and reflect on what was observed and how to move forward. It can just be very brief, doesn't have to be terribly formal, but you need to have that feedback. And other types of peer coaching can involve a pair or a team of teachers co-planning a lesson or curriculum unit, problem solving, analysing videos of lessons or study groups, and conducting action research. So you could also just set up a camera, record yourself, and then you and a teacher sit together and go through the recording and talk about it that way. That's quite effective. Loads of benefits to this. Increased ability to analyse their own lessons, better grasp of best practices in teaching and learning, deeper sense of efficacy, overcoming feelings of isolation, stronger professional ties and relationships with colleagues, improved teacher performance, a better articulated curriculum, more cohesive school culture and positive school climate, sustainable framework for in-house CPD. So if that's something that interests you, you think, oh yeah, perhaps our results could be better if our teachers felt more confident in the way that they're teaching, there is in the chat box of the Crowdcast, you've got downloads. You can download all these slides. So you're welcome to have those. You can share those in-house. But there's also a download of this document, Rocket Phonics Practice Map. So this practice map, you can use it for coaching, or teachers could just use it to reflect upon. And what it is Rocket Phonics lessons, so the phonics lessons, simplified and broken down. And you can put dates in if you want to do a program over 6 weeks, but it enables you to think about the different parts of the lesson. So for example, on a blending lesson, in revisit and review, using flashcards, That's going to be our focus to work on. Because if you think about improving the quality of your teaching in a phonics lesson, that's huge. There is so much that goes on in a lesson. How could you possibly look at everything without feeling totally overwhelmed? It can be nice to pick little parts of a lesson. And it has little things there in practice and application, things to look for, clear routines. Do children know what's expected? And do they start practicing their pupil practice booklets promptly? That's just such a simple one. Have you got those routines where the children go and get stuck into their practice independently and promptly? Or is the teacher talking on for a bit too long, channeling me in a webinar when I talk on for a bit too long? Are they talking on for a bit too long when those children could be getting on with practice? Or are the children faffing and fussing because they're year ones and that's what they do and they're not getting on with their practice and using time well? Live marking. Are the adults remembering to live mark inside pupil practice books and giving verbal feedback effectively? That could be your focus point. So, like I say, reflection for individual teachers, or it could be used as a really nice collaborative document, either peer-to-peer, teacher-to-teacher, or phonics leader to teacher as a bit of instructional coaching to look at what would you like to focus on to check that we're doing the best we can and tighten up our teaching and check it maybe across different teachers. Are we all being consistent, tighten up what we're doing? That can be very useful, and that is a download for you in the chat box. So it goes through blending lesson, segmenting lesson, common exception words, and then also next steps lesson. So if you're using next steps with year 2 or beyond, then some bits there as well. The first pages have got the date. You can sort of tick and date and record which bit you're looking at. And then this is a repeat of the same information. It goes back through the same lessons, but it's just got a big notes column. So you can actually jot any notes down. Question coming in here from Trishna. Could the First Steps program be used as intervention in reception? Absolutely, yes. Can we use actions related to graphemes through from nursery into reception? Absolutely, yes. That is a really good question, really good point. I'll finish off my final slides and come back to it. Thank you for listening. Any questions, put them in the chat. We'll do questions now, and you can email me later. And like I said, things are in the chat, but I'll come off share just so we can see each other's faces. Stop sharing. There we go. It's me. I'm back. Yes, I really, really advise, even if you don't have a nursery in your school, that you look at First Steps, which was the nursery designed program, as resources to use for intervention. The practice activity booklets can be perfect. The flashcards, absolutely. And they've got that speaking and listening. They've got that vocabulary in there as well. Big books as well, and certainly the mnemonic system, having the actions and the little ditties and the little songs, even not for intervention, that can be absolutely perfect to take through to reception. But yes, also as intervention, and also for if you have children who have specific complex additional needs who are working at a much lower level. A lot of that content is not too babyish, so it's got photographic images. So it could even be with some older children who have those needs as well. So yes, do be flexible with that. And that can create you the extra material you need when sometimes you have learners who they're not ready to keep progressing, but you don't want to kind of sit in the same content again. That's the same, but just looks a bit different. So yes, any other questions, guys, that you would like to ask at the moment about phonics screening check results? Like I say, I'm going to do a series of webinars coming up after the summer. So in September, look out for those. We're going to do those through Hodder, through Rocket Phonics. We will do a series of webinars that will be free for Rocket Phonics schools that will be based around additional needs and planning for those. Well, I hope you have enjoyed the session. If you watch on the recording, you can email me, you can add something in chat and I'll come back and check every now and then. And other than that, congratulations on your phonics screening check, whatever your results were, because I know you'll have all worked really, really hard on that. So big well done to you. And then big tip for the summer term, don't stop teaching now. I know you've done your phonics screening check and everyone goes, oh, sigh of relief, but don't stop. Keep going and get some great progress in the summer term. And I will see you all again soon.